Richard Engel, he's of course NBC News chief foreign correspondent. He's in Istanbul right now. Richard, what more can you tell us since we last spoke, your reaction to what we've been seeing over the last couple of hours?
Well, a lot of people have said this is shocking. The scale of it is shocking. The violence of it is shocking. But the fact that it took place, however, is not entirely shocking. We've been talking about the possibility that this kind of attack could take place for well over a year. ISIS and other affiliated groups have been gaining strength. They have a safe haven in Syria, now also a safe haven in Iraq. The militant groups themselves, in their propaganda, have been telling their followers, telling their supporters not to bother to come through Turkey, through Istanbul, which has been in the past the traditional route that the militants have been taking to try and get to Syria or to try and get to Iraq, but to stay in their home countries and do exactly the type of commando operation that we saw today. Some reports have come out that the militants fired around 30 shots once they entered the satirical news magazine's headquarters. That would mean that they unloaded a magazine and then reloaded another magazine and continued to fire, continued their attack. So it was a brave assault, as you've described, because this newspaper was under police protection. It was calmly executed. Then they left the building, opening fire again and escaping in what seemed to be getaway cars. This is going to be a serious wake-up call for French security forces, which are already dealing with the threat of Islamic extremists because of their operations in Mali, because of their support for operations against ISIS in Syria and Iraq.
French government at this point denying a lot of attacks were linked, but I'm looking at different reports of smaller attacks around France in the past few weeks. Among the dead, 2 police officers, and we're looking at a number of journalists whose lives were taken. Just reading here from the BBC about the 2 black-hooded men who entered the building with Kalashnikovs screaming Allah Akbar. There was a man in the building who works in the office next door who said a neighbor called to warn him that there were armed men in the building to shut all the doors, and moments later all these shots were heard throughout the building, automatic weapons firing in all directions. We looked out the window and saw the shooting was out in the street at this point. You'd think it was a war zone. Police have warned French media outlets to be on alert and pay attention to security. Obviously, the country was already on high alert, but now they are locking down major public areas, shopping malls, and houses of worship in light of what has happened there. We talked about 2 men armed with Kalashnikovs on the run, but there could be more. There was some sort of getaway vehicle and some reports of people inside that getaway vehicle aiding these terrorists. And
again, following up on what Willie said about this magazine, NBC News has published something about Charlie Hebdo. First published in 1969, the anti-religious left-wing magazine has no qualms about offending people. On New Year's Eve, it published a caricature of a dog having sex with the leg of the President of France, while on December 20th, it published a cartoon of the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus, who was depicted with a pig's nose. The magazine's offices were damaged and firebombed, as we said, in 2011, and the editor-in-chief was on an al-Qaeda hit list. It has been sued repeatedly by Muslims and
shut down by the French government. I mean, there were a few times where the paper itself was actually banned in France in its, first couple inceptions before it was brought back.
Mikey K, from everything that we're gathering here as this unfolds over the past hour and 40 minutes or so, is that France was not caught off guard in terms of this event. It's obviously tragic and traumatic and happened with nobody expecting it to happen at this newspaper, but there were lots of warning signs of trouble coming.
Yeah, Mika, I think that's a great point. One of the things that I'm specifically interested in is how the intelligence community will react to this, specifically in France, but also the broader European intelligence communities, such as MI5 and MI6 based in the UK. You'll have a very good grasp of this. The UK has had a policy called Contest, which is a sort of a holistic approach to radical Islam, and one of those aspects is a component called Protect. And what Protect does is it tries to identify identify where as Eamon said, the disenfranchised individuals, how they're becoming disenfranchised, and what is the process of that disenfranchisement within the organic realms of what we're seeing here, because it's all very well going to Syria and military airstrikes and whatnot, but we need to take a holistic approach to this, and the UK has been doing this since 2011. I would be incredibly interested to see what the French intelligence community's response to this was, in terms of, was this on their radar? We know, as you rightly point out, that there were other incidents that have occurred in recent times, but was this specifically on their radar? And then it brings us back to the broader debate on the lone wolf and that broad spectrum of threat, from the lone wolf all the way to, you know, organizations that are empowered, that have a lot of revenue like ISIS, and how the Western intelligence communities deal with that spectrum of threat.
Richard Engel, what's been happening around the world in the last, let's call it 2 hours, among security agencies? How has this changed things? How will this change things going forward, this attack on a soft target right in the heart of Paris?
Well, security agencies now are linked in a way that they never were in the past. Whenever something like this happens in a European capital, for example, the NYPD in New York City immediately step up their alert to see, okay, something happened in Paris. Is there another plot to either have a copycat operation or to have a similar operation in an American city, in New York specifically? So very quickly, intelligence agencies start to cooperate to see if this is just the start of a wave of attacks. You mentioned that the editor of this news magazine was on an Al-Qaeda list. Al-Qaeda likes to carry out multiple attacks, simultaneous attacks, to attack in one place like they did at 9/11, and then have another related attack somewhere completely different, to get security offices to thin out their numbers and not know exactly where to focus. No indication at this stage that we have heard that there is any evidence of a follow-on attack, but obviously that is a concern.
Of course, French President Francois Hollande immediately was on the scene. He has said that we will find the people who did this. France is today shocked by this terrorist attack. He called it an act of barbarism. A difficult moment for the country of France. I take it, Andrea, the White House and European nations will be on the phone today.
Oh, they're absolutely in close contact. As Richard was just saying, this is an instantaneous response from the Counterterrorism Center at CIA and all of the agencies. We're checking to see whether the head director of national intelligence, General Clapper, is still intending to give a speech. He was going to give an unusual speech at 9 o'clock Eastern this morning here in New York City. That said, this is a call to arms from all counterterrorism experts to look and see what threats they may determine. They're going to go back over all of the data that's been coming in, using keywords to see what NSA may have collected that might be some indicator. This is a manhunt as well, so that's obviously the primary response, but also collateral attacks, secondary attacks, other targets. Angela Merkel, Vladimir Putin has spoken out about the fact that this is an attack on everyone. Angela Merkel says that this is primarily an attack on freedom of the press, a shared value, a Western value. This is going to bring together all Western leadership. An attack on Paris is an attack on everyone.
And journalists. We're hearing from the Committee to Protect Journalists. The immediate comments from one of the directors is that this is a brazen assault on free expression in the heart of Europe. The scale of the violence is appalling. Journalists must now stand together to send the message that such murderous attempts to silence us will not